cut a slice of brightness through the gap in the wine-colored velvet drapes. It seemed like hours that he'd paced back and forth across the den, compulsively checking the sweeping driveway, where a row of young maples stretched spindly branches to the darkening February sky. Finally, she was here, the elusive Andie Tilly, who'd refused to take the job without first vetting her prospective employer. Andie. For a name that had turned his whole world upside down in an instant, it was surprisingly lightweight. Who was she, this person who held the key to his son's inner world? He imagined a frumpy preschool teacher type, cheerful, uncomplicated, spouting an endless stream of indulgent baby talk. The nonsense words that had once come so easily to Rhys, pulled from him by the magnetic charm of his smiling infant son, had dried up as the months ticked by and one developmental milestone after another fell by the wayside. It wasn't that he loved his beautiful boy any less. In fact, it was in the darkest moments that his love for Will burned the most acutely. But somewhere along the way, Rhys himself, exhausted, had subsided into a wordlessness that paralleled that of his child. When Will first uttered the name, the significance had been lost on Rhys. Andie. It was just a random pairing of syllables. But Will repeated the word with apparent intent. Andie. As he produced the sounds, he brandished a small blue squeeze ball. Rhys's first thought was to wonder whether there was a child named Andie in Will's preschool. Perhaps they'd played with the ball together. The formidable Mrs. Hodge cracked the mystery when Will, enunciating the word with increasing vehemence, grabbed her wrist and pulled her to the door, clutching the ball in his other hand. Andie was the young woman who worked with Will and had given him the ball, the nanny confirmed. The occupational therapist. She uttered the job title with suspicion, as if occupational therapy were some occult art. Rhys remembered the barrage of voicemails and emails from the earnest therapist. Andie. He'd blocked both her name and her dogged determination from his mind. Those had been difficult days, when an official diagnosis loomed like a line in the sand. Now he stood on the far side of that line, and this time, instead of threatening darkness, Andie's name, on Will's lips, brought the promise of light. One thing was certain, he would bring her into his household for as long as it took to help his son. His entire body hummed with urgency. He thanked heaven he'd heard about the layoffs at Metro West before she'd disappeared for good. Rhys paced into the foyer. Where were they? He stalked across the gleaming expanse of marble and flung the front door open. And there, almost nose to nose with him, stood a figure on the threshold, poised to knock. He took in the flash of emphatic hazel eyes and the perfect symmetry of dramatic winged brows set against pale, fine-grained skin. Her face was delicate, heart-shaped, and framed by a lush cascade of dark hair. The reality of this woman was so different from the image he'd conjured that it felt like an ambush. She was striking. Beautiful, by anyone's definition. Oh, I'm sorry. She took a step back and offered her hand. You must be Mr. Griffiths. I'm Andie Tilly.
Yes, I suppose you are.
Rhys realized the words were inappropriate as soon as they passed his lips, but there was no biting them back. It was a dilemma he often faced when meeting new people. Overcome by the barrage of sensory input in those first few moments, he could become unmoored and lose his way in conversation. With Andie Tilly, the problem was magnified tenfold. His gaze skated over her soft pink mouth, full but unsmiling, and the elegant stem of her neck. Eyes, lips, skin, throat. Each feature vied for his focus, like the scattered pieces of a puzzle he had yet to solve. Too late, he noticed that he'd grasped her hand and neglected to let it go. He gave himself a swift mental kick and released his grip. Sometimes it seemed his entire history